right, well, as we all know at this point, Warren Buffett's name is attached to President Obama's tax plan, the Buffett plan. It has garnered a lot of support and a lot of criticism. We have Warren Buffett on the line now to talk to us about the latest in this. Warren, thank you so much for being with us. We always appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
I want to talk about an interesting letter that you received from a freshman Republican congressman, Congressman Tim Huliskamp from Kansas. He sent you a letter asking for what a number of people have asked for, which is your tax returns. He said if you release your tax returns, he will do the same. You responded to that letter this week, and I want to discuss that letter because in it you said essentially that it wouldn't prove the point that you're trying to make, that the wealthiest of Americans don't pay their fair share if he, a congressman, or many others in Washington release their tax returns. What are you saying here? What is your main point?
Well, the congressman, like millions of Americans, probably has, who knows exactly what his income is, but my guess is that his total taxes paid to the federal government, both payroll taxes and income taxes, probably is in the mid-30s, and he's like the people in our office. As you know, we had the people in our office make the calculation, and they ranged from 33% to 41%, but averaged 36%. And my guess is that most congressmen would fall in that area. What's really needed to look at the tax inequities is to look at the returns of the ultra-rich, like my own return. And I'm delighted. I would be delighted to give my return along with the others of the ultra-rich. And then we can just see exactly why the tax system produces these huge tax inequities that result in me and other people in the ultra-rich paying a much lower tax rate than the people in my office, or probably you pay, Poppy, or for that matter, or that the congressman pays.
In your letter to the congressman, it's interesting. It looks like for the first time, Warren, you've made public what your adjusted gross income is. You say it's about nearly $63 million for 2010. Is this indeed the first time you've made that public? If so, why do it now?
Well, I presented these same figures 3 or 4 years ago, for a different tax year, obviously, in that time, and I gave the figures. I'm not bashful about giving anybody the figures in my return, not because I have no reluctance to do it. I just want to make sure others of the ultra-rich do it too, so that the congressmen and the super committee and all of the people that are looking at the inequities in the tax law will see just exactly how the ultra-rich, including me, in many cases, pay this tax rate that's far lower than many millions of Americans. And it doesn't apply to everybody. There's some people that make very large sums, and they make it all by ordinary income, and they pay the ordinary income rates. But as I pointed out in my op-ed article in the New York Times, people who make money with money are getting taxed in many cases at far lower rates than people who make money by their own labor. And if that's something the American people believe in, that's fine. But I don't think most of the American people understand that, and I think it would be terrific if the congressman would get the returns from the ultra-rich. And he doesn't even have to identify them by name. He can call them A, B, C, D, and so on. But it would be terrific if those returns would get published, and I'll certainly put mine in there, and I'll put my name on it, too. And then the American public can see exactly what is happening with this tax system. And as I point out in my letter to the congressman, these people, these 400 people in the most recent year for which figures are available, had total income of over $90 billion. And they paid a rate of 21.5%, counting payroll taxes, of their taxable income to the government, and that's a far lower rate than the people who make $75,000 in my office pay.
Warren, in this letter, you challenge the ultra-rich. You say, if you, Congressman, can get any of the ultra-rich to release their return simultaneously with me, I'll be willing to have a pre-release wager with anyone who wishes for any sum that they wish that the figures in my return will be exactly those used in my op-ed piece. So you're challenging anyone that says that those figures may not be accurate. Yes. But you have a number of very wealthy individual friends. Have you talked to them, Warren, about whether they'll release their tax returns?
I haven't talked about whether they'll release their returns. Maybe the congressman could do that for me. The Wall Street Journal also suggested that I release it. Maybe the Wall Street Journal can get their boss, Rupert Murdoch, he's one of the ultra-rich like I am, and he's a friend of mine, and if he'll, I'd love to have his return published with mine, and people can see what we're paying, and they can see whether they really regard that as the proper system or whether some adjustments in our system should be made. I welcome the congressman's inquiry into this, because if if he can get these returns released, I think that I think a lot of congressmen will get educated as to just exactly how inequitable the system is.
You made this challenge.
But yeah, to your point, Bobby. I mean, yeah, there was a slight implication in his letter that maybe I wasn't quite telling the truth about my figures. So I would be happy to wager him or anybody else $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, whatever they would like. And if my return shows a different figure than that that I put out publicly, I'll pay it to them or to their charity. And if I'm right and I've reported the accurate figures, then I would expect them to pay that to a charity I would name.
Warren, you first challenged Rupert Murdoch last week at the Fortune Most Powerful Women's Conference in an interview with Carol Loomis to release his 2010 tax returns and that you would do the same. I'm wondering if you've heard from your friend Rupert Murdoch on that point.
No, I haven't heard anything. Of course, the Wall Street Journal said they asked me to produce mine, and they said they hadn't heard anything from me. So I just would like to assure the Journal that anytime Rupert wants to give his 2010 return and put it up in full, I'll put up mine in full, and we'll let the press generally look at it and Congress and see whether they think some improvements can't be made in the present tax system.
I think interestingly, Warren, whether you like it or not, you've sort of become the center of this tax debate. The White House asking and you granting them permission to use your name on the White House's tax proposal for the wealthiest Americans. I'm just interested in your feelings on that, on whether you want to be at the center of the debate. Are you passionate enough about this, Warren, that you're willing to go all the way and take these challenges from people on this front? Is it that important to you?
Well, I first actually put the figures out, and similar figures 3 or 4 years ago, and really nothing has happened in Congress, and we have this huge gap in revenue and expenses. And what I put out will not in any way close the gap. But if we're going to ask millions and millions, frankly everybody in the country, for shared sacrifice, and we're going to talk about maybe backing off promises for entitlements and all of that to the rest of the American population, I just think that the fact that the ultra-rich have these very low rates in many cases, I think should also be a subject for examination. And it's like I say, when you've got a 1.2 or 1.3 trillion dollar budget gap, this alone is not going to solve a revenue problem. But for me and my the ultra rich friends to be getting a favored ride while the American public are being called on for shared sacrifice, I think bears re-examination.
Finally, Warren, given the difficulty the Obama administration is having right now getting legislation through Congress, we just saw what happened to the Jobs Act in the Senate last night. My question to you is, what do you think the likelihood is of this administration being able to get tax reform as you have proposed and as they have adopted? What do you think the likelihood is of them getting that through this Congress right now? Well,
the Super Committee has to report, and the Super Committee is faced with this unpleasant choice, and it's going to be very tough but they have this proposal that will hit defense and things like that. So there's 12 people that should be motivated to work out something that's an improvement over our present system. And all I've done is I've sent material to some members of the Super Committee. I hope that we can do something in this, because we're going to be asking the American people to tighten their belts. Hundreds of millions of people, and I would say if there's one group that can tighten their belt a little, it's the ultra-rich who are enjoying very low tax rates.
Warren, thank you as always so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.